Record. Okay, I am recording. All right, what's up, Anesti? Man, it's nice to connect with you. So
Yeah,
we connected, must have been like a month ago. Yeah, maybe 2 months ago, because you were out on the West Coast. You just recently moved to Florida, kind of getting settled in. And we talked a lot about your past. And what I really like about what you told me, just about you kind of get, you threw out to me the idea of unconventional ways to make being in the ocean your full-time career,
hmm
which is exactly like what you've done, you're doing, and just your story is amazing. So it's really inspirational. So I'd love for you to kind of dig into your backstory and what led you into diving and into the ocean.
yeah. I've been around the ocean for as long as I can remember. I was born in New Orleans and moved around from Greece to Brazil for a little bit in my early life, and then settled down into Florida. And when I was about five, and lived most of my life in Florida. When I was like seven, I was part of a fellowship that would go around different beaches and set up like a cordon off areas of sea turtle egg sites and to protect them from foot traffic, and just really had a fascination from the ocean. And I've been around water, since then. In fact, through my work with an organization called Diversity in Aquatics, we reflected on a time when we learned how to swim. And I honestly couldn't recall. Like, I think I was too young to remember when I learned to swim. I know how to swim for as long as I could remember. So that gives you an idea of how long I've been around water and the ocean and whatnot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You were in the army,
I
right?
was, yeah. I had a bit of a rough childhood, just to kind of reverse back from that a little bit. I had a stepfather who was uh, not the greatest, and we'll leave it at that. And I got kicked out when I was 16 and was homeless. I was living in my car in the back seat, sleeping in the back seat. Still going to high school, still trying to finish out my last little bit. And thankfully, after about a few months, I ran into a family it was like a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing through ROTC in high school, that found out I was living in my car and was like, "Hey, you seem like a good kid. You can stay with us as long as you keep your nose clean and stay in school and graduate on time. You can stay with us for as long as you need to have that stability." And so they let me move in, knowing it was only temporary though too. Um, and yeah, I just finished out high school until I joined the army. Um, it was like one of my few options that I thought I had, because I was just a 17-year-old at the time, close to 18. In fact, I joined the army exactly a month after my 18th birthday. I was in survival mode. I was in survival
Yeah.
mode, and the army was like, "Hey, we'll put a roof over your head and feed you every day." And I was like, "All right, I'm sold." Like, all the other benefits, like job training and access to college and all that. I was like, I don't care. I'm in survival mode, and I need a place to live. And so
Right.
the army seemed like my best bet. Yeah.
And did that, I know when you talked to me about, you kind of mentioned that because uh, I felt like when you told me that story and when you discovered diving, you said diving really helped you. Um, I don't know how, well, it helped you a lot. I just want to ask you in what way, because I feel like diving in the water for a lot of people is very therapeutic, and everyone has their own reasons why.
Mhm.
For me, I see diving as like underwater meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. I say this, without any hesitation. It saved my life. And I know that can sound, um, kitschy or, cliche, but it really did.
Mhm.
In the army, I joined in 2000, and even before 9/11, I had already been deployed to Kosovo. I'd already served in that conflict under the NATO flag, and so I was already, just kind of in that mode. And then 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden we're deployed to Afghanistan, and we come back and we're deployed again. And I was involved in an RPG attack that got shrapnel in my left eye, and just shredded the muscles. I had already had some eye problems previously, but it just really made it worse. And it just shredded those muscles, and I lost full peripheral vision in my left eye. So my left eye doesn't really move around a whole lot, and
Okay.
broke my nose. So I had surgery to remove the shrapnel from my eye, but they never touched my nose. So now I have like some breathing issues that I'm trying to get fixed because of a systemic, like chronic deviated septum. And so, you know, it just it wasn't a pretty picture. You know, I had joined in a time where I thought I was just gonna like coast for about 4 years. You know, in 2000, and just do my time, get out, maybe could be able to go to college or something, and just figure out my life from there. I didn't really have a focus on future long-term goals. That really wasn't my mindset at the time, and that stems from being in survival mode. But then after I got out, um, you know, um, after I got hurt, I was actually medically reclassified, and I spent some more time as an intelligence specialist with 7th Special Forces Group, and did some work down in Colombia. But um, nothing as significant as what I had done before. And then when I got out, I just I didn't have a focus on life. I just was still kind of back in survival mode. And this time I have PTSD. I've got these things that I kept convincing myself were normal. Because survival mode is all I had ever known, so it felt normal to me. And on how to process and deal with my anger and other emotions, that I was constantly denying myself because, I was told for years, even before the army, to suck it up and not feel those feelings. And so I was dealing with a lot of traumas, man. And I was involved with a lot of high risk activity. Like I wasn't suicidal, but I was in a position where I didn't care if I lived or died. And and I threw caution to the wind and got involved in all kinds of stuff that has inherent risk to it, that are relatively safe, as an activity, like skydiving and martial arts, like full contact martial arts, in so many ways. But those have inherent risks, and I thought scuba diving was going to be my next adrenaline filled adventure. And I got into it, and the second I became neutrally buoyant in the pool, I wasn't even in the ocean yet. I was in the pool, and I finally like got that hover down,
Yeah.
that everybody else was struggling with, and I was struggling with it too. Don't get me wrong, man. I was a bad student in open water, but because I had no idea what I was doing. I just was like, I just want to get certified and get out in the ocean with sharks already. Um, but once I got that hover down, because I had a great instructor, Stacy Goodrich, and I got that hover down, and it's just a light bulb went off, man. I think it's rare and an exception to have like such a very distinct, significant turning point in your life where you're just like, for me, therapeutic, it seems like an understatement. It was just a place where like all the problems of my mind and the world just kind of went away just for those few seconds. And it didn't solve all my problems by any means, but it gave me the clarity. It slowed my mind down, all the
Yeah,
trauma driven
definitely.
behaviors I had, the constant like hypervigilance that I was uh, suffering from, just slowed all that down. And I was like, because through, especially through the martial arts, like there are a few different styles that I study. There's like meditative practices attached to it, and I've been to like Buddhist temples, like Thai Buddhist temples, and just really tried hard to reach that meditative state. And I was always jealous of my friends and my colleagues that were able to just kind of like come away with that with some sense of peace, because I was like, I just kind of faked the funk, like, yeah, it was cool. And then deep down inside, I was like, I didn't feel nothing. Like, it just wasn't working for me. It just wasn't. But then
Yeah.
I felt like when I got neutrally buoyant in the water, like that was the feeling that people get from meditation and from, other like meditative practices. Like that was it for me. And it slowed my mind down for me to be able to kind of like go, okay, like, what do I want to do with my life? And I was finally asking
Yeah.
myself that at like 27 years old, and I was like, I felt behind the curve already. So I've just been trying to play catch up ever since.
That's cool. I mean, definitely, because when you're in the water, it's just silence, isn't it? It's just you're basically stuck with your own thoughts because you can't talk. You're just breathing. Like all you have to do is you're thinking, and it's just you're underwater in a different world, especially for the first time. Yeah, I definitely Yeah, that feeling is good, and it's amazing to hear your story because of how it's affected you, and kind of you're coming from like adrenaline to something that's so relaxing and so therapeutic, like you say. And so you got into diving, and then what what was like your first step into like the diving industry?
Uh, well, I've always been um, analytical. So like the second I stepped into the dive shop, even as a student, I'm analyzing the layout of their store and what seems to generate the most income, and just really being that analytical about the whole structure of it all, and
Awesome.
asking a
Yeah,
lot of leading
awesome, awesome.
questions about what to expect in a dive class, and like, is it structured like for business professionals, where you do it in the evenings and weekends, or they expect you to just do a Monday through Friday thing, and then because I had no idea what I was getting into, so I asked a lot of questions and was just really like hyper aware of the nature of like, I'm the kind of person that I sees a watch and I don't just go, oh, that's what time it is. I was like, how does that thing work? And
Yeah,
I want to
yeah,
open up
yeah,
the
yeah.
inside and see all the gears. And that's what I did
Mhm.
with the dive shop that I trained at. And then I got nitrox certified like a couple of weeks later at a different dive shop, and saw how they operated. And it was an entirely different agency. So my first shop was a patty shop in Tarpon Springs. And then a couple of weeks later, I signed up for a camping trip that included nitrox certification. And that was an SSI shop, so I got a little taste of like how SSI does things, what their curriculum looks like and is structured like, and more specifically that particular shop. And so I just kind of got a taste for how those things go. And just diving a lot with like, and I probably dove like with different like expeditions, different trips around Florida for like 4 different dive shops before I moved to California. And when I got to California, I think, that was when I kind of needed a revamp anyway. And I was like, I want to become an instructor. Like, I love this so much that I want to move up the ranks. And, I wasn't even advanced open water certified yet. I did that in California at a shop in Saratoga, in the Bay near San Jose. And I did advanced open water with them. I did rescue diving with the dive safety officer at Aquarium of the Bay at the time. Normally, I would have gone through the shop that I really liked as well in Saratoga, but he was offering it for like $50, and I was like, can't turn
Yeah.
that down. I was
Yeah.
broke because I didn't realize how expensive California was for some reason, when I moved there. And yeah, so I did rescue with him, and then I bounced back to that shop and did dive master. Then went to the IDC at another shop where I started teaching at for a while. And um, yeah, I just kind of like, I've been described as a bulldozer. Once I have a task, once I have a goal set in mind, I just keep plowing until the job is done.
Yeah.
And
It's amazing.
yeah, it just once scuba diving was a big part of getting that focus in life. But once I started to develop like a future mindset of like what my future was going to look like, because I had never had that before. I was just living day by day. I had in survival mode. I had no idea what my future was going to look like, and didn't try to care to put it together. And then when I hit that turning point, that really kind of planted the seed for me to start to kind of focus on what are next steps? What are steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10?
Yeah.
In my life. And so once I had it in my mind that I was going to be an instructor, people were like, you should probably take advanced open water first before that. So I just busted through those courses, and I spent some time in between each one. I didn't knock them out like a lot of people where they become an instructor in like less than a year. Um, I took some time. So from open water all the way to the start of my dive master training had been about 3.5, almost 4 years. So I had spread it out as I could afford it and as I saw fit, to feel comfortable moving on to the next level
Yeah.
with my experience at the time. And I became an
It's awesome.
instructor. Yeah, I became an instructor, and I was at a really high volume shop. A lot of our students worked in Silicon Valley, right there in Santa Clara, San
Yeah.
Jose area. So I had a lot of students that worked at Facebook, Apple, Evernote, Netflix, IBM, you name it. They were all like different like software engineers, stuff like that that work in Silicon Valley, where they find themselves with a ton of disposable income and
Yeah.
really boring jobs where they're staring at a screen for 40, 50 hours a week. So scuba
Yeah.
diving was like the thing for them, where they'd come into the shop and drop a couple of $1,000s, buy a whole package, where I've got open water students that already own their own BCDs and tanks sometimes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I was like, for the first year as an instructor, I didn't even own my own tanks, like, So it was kind of a unique experience that I don't think is super reflective of like the rest of the industry, at least in America.
Yeah, it's not definitely.
But I was in that little, I found myself in that little hotspot where we had like a surplus of potential students, that kind of met that intersection of needing adventure and having the means to be able to do it. So, worked at that. But what really kind of set me back was like, I was teaching privileged people at the end of the day, really privileged people, not just by race, but by class, and financial means to be able to afford that stuff. Some of them had nicer gear than I did, as their instructor. And it was just like, it was kind of it was a fun experience and I learned a lot, but it was a surreal experience to say like, this isn't matching my philosophies of why I wanted to become an instructor. And really the reason why was because I wanted to make it more accessible to people, to be able to dedicate and donate my time in a way. Like I don't think anybody tries to become a scuba instructor to become rich. If they do, they're in the wrong line.
Right. Yeah.
But I wanted to do it to help people. And I was helping people who had the means to kind of do it, whether I was there or not. And I wanted to kind of change gears. And then I broke away from that shop and started working with different nonprofit organizations
Yeah,
around.
something
Yeah, go ahead.
something I wanted to bring up is I'm into marketing and stuff, and you had a background in doing some marketing outside the dive shop, right?
Yeah, I had a background in digital media and communications. So when I moved to
Right.
California, my first job there was director of communications
Mhm.
for a community health clinic. Um, and then like two of them back to back. One of them I worked at for a number of years, the Native American Health Center. I was their media program manager there, running their media program. So I had a strong background in digital media across the board: filmmaking, photography, web design, social media strategy, kind of all of those combined to be able to help run external communications programs and online community engagement and online organizing projects for community health and public health nonprofits, especially with like a social justice and equity sort of foundation to the work that they're doing. That was a big part of who I was and my identity. Um, and as much as I had a lot of experience in that, I found myself in a place where it wasn't really that sustainable anymore. Like the landscape was changing, and especially nonprofits, as good a work as they do, they can still be toxic work environments as well. And that's what I found myself in, especially in that last position. And the decision that was made was that we can get the same kind of work done by hiring someone fresh out of college and pay them half as much. Then we need someone who is a strategist, and so nonprofits really started to switch gears and lock down and kind of batten down the hatches with their budget to hire people that they could pay less than half to, that are fresh out of college, or even just an associate's degree or something, to produce content and manage their social media and give updates to their website, versus a strategist that can align with branding and future like strategic goals of the organization, a planner, and a project manager to be able to kind of manage those things more than just doing the frontline work of creating the content or curating content around the outreach. And so, long story short, I found myself like kind of outdated in a way, as a director level experience in that field, getting replaced by people fresh out of college. That's what happened to me at my last job. And it was around that time where I started to really kind of build up. I had just become an instructor, and I said, you know, if I have the opportunity to go back to school if I wanted to, there was a VA program that I had just found out about years later, you know, go figure, that allowed me to go back to school and get paid a stipend for it. And so between my VA disability and that stipend, it was comparable to what I was getting paid at one of my previous jobs. But then with the added opportunity to be able to go back to school full time, where my bills could be paid, my family could be taken care of, and go back to school. So that's the decision I made. But it also aligned with the opportunities that were coming to me in the outskirts of the work I was doing through scuba,
Mhm.
including getting offered a job as expedition leader for a nonprofit called USX. So
Yeah, yes.
I was at the Oakland Vet Center, you know, and someone there was like, you know, I was talking to them about scuba and the citizen science work that I was doing with Reef Check and all that, and they're like, man, you should really check out this organization called USX, and they gave me the website, and it had some really cool stuff going on. They had like a wish list with a couple of like ocean related things on it, like Aquarius and whatnot. But predominantly it was just all mountain climbing. And I had no idea about mountain climbing at the time. I was like, I'm from Florida. It's like the highest point of elevation is like 46 feet on a golf course somewhere, I think. Like it's just like, I don't know. But the only way to contact him was to apply for the Denali expedition that they had going on at the time. So I did
Can
that
you can you
knowing.
can you briefly talk about briefly just say what USX does, like what kind of organization it is?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. USX is a nonprofit like scientific research agency that recruits military veterans and connects them with STEM field research through these adventurous expeditions, and especially in like remote and austere environments. And the whole premise is that the organization partners with academic institutions or research entities, both public, academic, and private, around research that needs to be conducted, and everything from climate and environmental research to physiological research on the human body. And that was predominantly the research they were doing with a lot of these mountaineering trips to Everest and then Denali, was to not only raise awareness of PTSD and the suicide rates for military veterans, but to also do physiological research on heart rhythms. And we've actually published the data in a poster since then on both the work we did on Everest and at Denali. And so and it helps military veterans like continue their sense of purpose. You know,
Yeah,
when you
that's
join
a
the
big one.
army, whether you had it instilled in you already and that's why you joined, or you just joined not knowing what was going on like I did, you're going to develop a sense of purpose. You're going to develop like, I need to feel like I'm contributing to something bigger than myself, you know,
Right.
at least even in theory. And that never goes away. Once you go back into the civilian world, it's one of the biggest factors that makes or breaks your adjustment into the civilian world, whether you can continue that sense of purpose or not. And to be able to take veterans and utilize their specialized skill sets, especially in survival, especially
Yeah.
in, you know, environmental adaptation, to be able to go into these remote and austere environments that scientists generally don't want to touch, to say, hey, we've got a team that eat, live, and breathe this type of environment. You know, what do you need out there? And so they train our military veterans in how to work the sensors or how to collect the data, what the protocols are, and then we go out there and we do it. And I reached out to the organization just on a whim. I applied to the Denali expedition knowing that I wasn't going to get on that team, and if I had, I would have probably backed out because I was not ready for Denali to be my first mountaineering expedition. I'm still not really, but the expedition leader was like super nice. Elise, she reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you didn't qualify, and I don't think that's a surprise, but you know, I sent your resume over to the co-founders, Harold and Connor, and they love what you have going on and want to talk to you more." And I was like, "Okay, cool. That's what I wanted to accomplish." So, I mean, it's a reflection of like the unconventional means and how I network and make connections. You know, that we could talk about a little more as well. And so I had a phone conversation with Harold, and he's like, yeah, man, you know, just tell me more about you. So I told him my story and what I have going on. And I was like, you know, I just capped off with, hey, if there's anything I can do to help and be part of the team for anything ocean related that you have going on, you know, I'm game. And he goes, oh, no, you misunderstand. We didn't want to talk to you to recruit you as a team member. We want you to help launch our ocean research program. And so it's like just another day that ends in Y, and biting off more than I can chew and being in over my head. But I accepted the challenge. You know, I didn't know any other way. And so, um, yeah, I put the whole programming together and recruited a team. And, you know, we started off kind of small. We went out to Florida, down to Pompano Beach, and did coral reef research with Reef Check Florida. I was already familiar with the structure of Reef Check because I had already volunteered with Reef Check California, even though Reef Check Florida is a whole world of difference um, in what we study and how we study it. But some of the similarities were like the transects and protocols that we follow. And so it was a little bit more of a seamless transition for me. And then we brought veterans in that were scuba certified and got them trained in how to lay transects and identify different coral and indicator species. And we went out there and just collected data and, you know, had a great time. And it was, you know, a small step, but significant step for launching our ocean research at USX. And since then, we've done like topside assistance with launching scientific submarine vessels out in Monterey. We've collected data on the kelp forests out at Big Sur and along the remote California coastlines. Most recently, we partnered with the University of Miami and did shark tagging and research with them out in Biscayne Bay, kind of just south of Miami there. And yeah, it's just been a wild ride so far. After my very first expedition with USX, they said, "Hey, we love how well organized you are with everything from managing the veterans to all the logistics to the budget. Man, you're just on top of everything. We'd like to promote you to director of operations and run, you know, operations and logistics for all of our expeditions." And I was like,
Yeah,
okay.
that's awesome.
I had just gotten laid off from that job, you know, that in that toxic work environment. So I was like, yeah, I mean, like, I don't have anything else going on. Sure. And so, yeah, I became director of operations. And then about less than a year later, the co-founder, who was kind of loosely operating as our CEO, Harold, you know, he was the commander of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington National Cemetery, a very big, prestigious honor. He's still active duty, and his family had just had a new child, and I think maybe was trying to work on another one, you know, just growing their family. And was, you know, he was just in a place in his life where he's like, you know, I need to pass the torch. And I was like, you know, he was considering just either passing the torch or shutting the organization down. And so I advocated that this organization's needed, you know, let's try and find new leadership. And he's like, all right, let me see what we can do. And he talked to the board of directors, and he came back to me and said, hey, we voted unanimously to promote you to executive director and hand the organization over to you if you want it. And I was like, sure. Just, you
That's
know,
awesome.
yeah. And so now I run the organization. We're in a funding gap right now, and even if we weren't, we wouldn't be able to do anything because of COVID right now anyway. But it gives us the opportunity to really have some breathing room to figure out what our next steps are, and apply for grants, and, you know, build new relationships, which is the groundwork of what we're doing, including recruiting new board members, and just kind of just getting back to basics and building out our foundational structure before we start launching more expeditions, hopefully for 2021.
That's cool. That's such an amazing story. I love how I mean, it's their quote that really stood out when I talked to you the first time. Is you're exactly unconventional ways to make being in the ocean your full time career, and it's you connected something that really had a huge impact on you is scuba diving to then through ups and downs turn it into something really positive that's got like you basically there's a quote by Steve Jobs that says that you can only connect the dots by looking back. And it's like kind of looking back on your story, it seems like you've really been able to do that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that maybe that hustle mentality or just that what is it maybe the way you look towards opportunity and that kind of mentality and looking for ways you can be involved in the ocean and connect, taking your experiences with you to be able to make that happen?
Yeah, I've always been one to kind of see, a different side of things. I looked at conventional structures and I go,
Yeah.
that's not working for me. I need something else. And so, but I want the idea of that, but I'm not happy with the normal grind, and paying your dues kind of thing. Like I understand putting work in, to make something substantive and worthwhile. But I want to ensure that it's in a way that's meaningful and not just kind of going through the steps, just because. And so I'm constantly networking in ways that people find unconventional, um, and just kind of making connections in ways that are unique. And so one of the things that really stands out is when I made the decision to become an instructor, or more importantly, making the decision to work with the ocean full time and not necessarily get out of digital media altogether, but at least get out of the nature of what I was doing with digital media, through working with, like really conventional community health, public health nonprofits. As much as I appreciate the work that they were doing, it just, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. The ocean is what was fulfilling me. And so I said, all right, I'm not going to just throw my skills out the door. Let me figure out what I can do with them. And so then it was around that time I started working with organizations like 350.org and Oceana and the Center for Biological Diversity, and utilizing my digital media skills as a contractor, essentially, to document a lot of their direct actions. So I was working with like environmental nonprofits. So it was like just kind of like a phase. I went from, from community health and public health, which has, in a lot of ways has a lot to do with the ocean and vice versa, but industry wise, not as much. To working with environmental organizations, but still using my digital media skills. And then I made the transition from there into USX, which is more on the side of the environment and the ocean specifically, and having my digital media skills kind of supplement that. So it kind of was in phases. Like I didn't just kind of quit full turkey,
Yeah.
and just have a complete career shift overnight. Like it happened over time, and it happened because while I was working in one industry, I found myself on the weekends really planting seeds and developing a resume through volunteer
Hmm.
work predominantly, which I know people are like, oh, why would you work for free? Like, well, it helped me get to where I am now. It
Yeah.
helped me change careers. I started volunteering at the Aquarium of the Bay, like I had mentioned, Cal Academy of Sciences, Reef Check Foundation, Reef Check California, just volunteering, just really getting my chops in on, um, you know, diving in a professional capacity like that, but also, the environment, which was a big part of where I knew I wanted to go next. And that helped inform my decision, especially through the people that I met through Reef Check California. There's a few people that have really helped shape my understanding of what my future could look like. Because even then, as big minded as I am, like I still kind of had some small time thinking. Like I didn't know what I didn't know about what my future could look like. And they're like,
Know
Anesti, you've
that
got
you don't.
a unique thing going. And so just talking with them kind of helped open up my mind. And I said, okay, I want the ocean to be my full-time job. How can I make that happen? And
Yeah,
so
that's great.
scuba diving was the first kind of, industry, I guess you could say, that I looked at. And I was like, all right, I want to be an instructor, but it's not viable enough to be an instructor full time, at least not
Yeah.
around here. Even at a shop that I was working at that was as high volume as it was, where, in my first year, I certified 132 students, you know,
Oh.
um, yeah, and that was from June 2018 to the end of the year. Yeah, I had 132 students. I didn't sign off on their picks for all of them because I co-taught with Kevin, but between he and I, we had 132 students go through our classes, and I certified about 89 of them. I think Kevin was being gracious in the beginning, to letting me sign off on most of the students we co-taught, and then we got to a place where we're like, okay, and then we started splitting them from there. But yeah, I touched at least 132 students in some teaching capacity just in the first 6 months of being an instructor. That's how high volume that shop was, and even then, it wasn't sustainable to be full time and pay all my
Yeah.
bills that way. And so I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm turning my wheels here. I'm getting experience, and this is great, but it's not what I need to do. And I started to kind of evaluate other positions in the scuba industry. I'm like, well, I could work at the dive shop, and that was definitely a no-go. Dive shops are needed, and we needed to support them, but it wasn't for me. And then I was like, well, I see people, there are other people have full-time jobs working as like manufacturers, like sales reps, regional sales reps,
Yeah.
or I could work for an agency like Patty, directly and be like a regional manager or something like that. And, so I applied to a few positions at Patty, never heard back. It's like, okay, well, that's not working out. Let me figure out something else. And then once I connected with USX, it started to make sense. Like it needs to be more than just the scuba diving itself. Like scuba diving can be adjacent to what I'm doing, but it can't be the only thing, because that's just not the way the world works right now. Um, you know, and so um, my wife is an artist, and artists have a similar struggle where they want to try and, you have this moniker of like the starving artist, right? Well, we have the starving scuba instructor as well, right? And
Yeah.
so, so from my wife, we develop strategies where she can leverage her artwork and what she does to be able to build a sustainable living for herself and contribute to the family, and have it be more than just her artwork. It's about what her artwork represents. It's about the community that it touches and the people that it empowers, and the new spaces that it can open up, especially in academia. So her artwork has been on the cover of like 4 or 5 different academic texts, including an MLA book that's coming out later this year that's been held up by COVID. But so she has her artwork that it kind of navigating a very unconventional space for most artists. And so helping her build those kind of strategies is the mindset that I developed as a scuba instructor. What can I do to to have scuba diving be part of it, but not inherently just scuba diving in the
Just scuba
industry
diving.
that it exists right now? And just
Yeah.
kind of that kind of brainstorming, that outside the box thinking helped me to kind of establish, like, I can be an expedition leader, I can be a dive safety officer, I can be these 2 things. And now that I have the opportunity to go back to school, I can have a scientific degree in oceanography, which is I'm getting now at the Florida Institute of Technology, to kind of help back up some of the exploration science work that I want to do, whether that's under the USX banner or individually or whatnot. I could see a future where I could potentially be, you know, uh, a sort of like Neil deGrasse Tyson of the oceans, and let's start re-leveraging my digital media background in filmmaking, photography, creating a lot of content around the ocean, and have like a new generation of inspiration that we had with Jacques Cousteau in the 60s and 70s, to be able to get people more involved with ocean and ocean protection, and kind of bridge that gap between the scuba diving, the ocean work, and my digital media background. Just bring it full circle to be able to create content online and on media that that invokes inspiration for people to get more involved with the oceans.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. We touched on this a little bit last time we talked, but you kind of brought forth some marketing strategies that you think would be really, like, from taking from your experience in the nonprofit world and the ways that they were doing some marketing when you were in the media space. Can you kind of explain some of your ideas about maybe some of these dive shops can put into their marketing strategies to reach these new markets?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult because of essentially who owns most dive shops. If we look back, scuba diving has always been a fairly cost prohibitive activity. So we have people in America that, um, generations of people who've been able to afford access to scuba diving.
Right.
And generally those people are white and upper middle class, wealthy type people. Obviously there's exceptions, but that's collectively the major demographic of the scuba industry, especially of who own dive shops. And so I get concerned sometimes when I hear like, oh, this dive shop's been around for like 40 years. And I'm like, that could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing, honestly, like in my world, because, you develop like old ways of thinking, and you got salty old dogs sometimes that have this gatekeeper mentality where you walk into a shop
Yeah.
and they're all like, what do you want? And it's not
Yeah.
friendly, and it's not, and it's, you got people who pretend they're Navy SEALs, and I worked in Army
Yeah.
Special Ops, and I'm just like, man, you need to calm down with that stuff.
Yeah. It's actually
It's
amazing to me that I've met, even so I've mostly taught and worked in the dive industry in Southeast Asia. And I've been
mhm.
in some of these just tourist destinations. And there's been a couple guys in the dive shops just like exactly what you just said, old school, kind of coming from almost a military background of like just having an ego trip on being a diving instructor in a tourist destination where people are coming to have fun, and these instructors are coming in with like this ego trip of like trying to execute like they're in the military. And I was like, yeah, but
Yeah, and it's an industry killer, man. You know,
mhm,
you got people with egos flying around. You got a lot of male-driven sexism and misogyny kind of flying around too. There's been so many reports. It's not plaguing our industry by any means, but it's enough reports to
yeah,
be concerning around
mhm,
like men being shitty. In positions of power, and that could, you know, all in all, the state of scuba diving and the people who serve at the front lines of the scuba diving industry, I feel collectively are excluding an entire generation, both through race, but also through a class divide, where the prices are what they are, and like, and there's no adaptation, there's no flexibility, there's no sense of like community, and it's all driven by capitalism. When you have an industry based almost solely on capitalism and serving the people who can afford it, you're going to have a huge gap, and there's a generational gap in scuba diving right now. The average diver is getting older and older in age. I think the average diving age now is like 62 or 64. It's up there, and there's nothing wrong with old people. Like I'm not against old people. Like I love my elders. I love the knowledge and the wisdom that they're willing to share when they're willing to share it, and for those who are willing to share it. But collectively, the elders, so to speak, in the scuba industry are usually very capitalist driven, and I think that creates a huge divide in our industry. And the way to kind of overcome that is to take a different approach altogether. And it's not going to work for everybody, and we're still going to need some for-profit shops. There needs to be a balance. I don't expect anybody's going to follow this advice, but if they do, I don't want everybody to. But there's some nonprofit structures that exist out there. There's a precedence for nonprofit, like 501c3 filed organizations that are about scuba diving and have elements of ocean education. Blue Endeavors is one that comes to mind. I've only I haven't worked with them directly. I've been to a few of their little seminars at their shop in Alameda, California. And they've got an interesting program. It's mostly volunteer based, so you're not trying to make any money, but you get to scuba dive, you get to build a resume, and it could be a stepping stone for a lot of people to find their own path in something similar to what I did, through all the volunteer work that I had done. And once you step out of that capitalistic mindset and start being more community driven, more about helping children be inspired, more about helping other people in your community be inspired, and provide access, where now it becomes somewhat affordable because a grant covered their equipment, and now you're donating your time as a dive master or as an instructor, to be able to provide that accessibility. You're helping close that generational and that class gap, that introduces new people. And I think that it can help reinvigorate the industry in ways that people had never really seen before. Where now once you get them in the door, I haven't met a scuba diver that hasn't been hooked. Like almost all my students like still dive currently, and some of them are outdoing me in underwater photography. I've got to step my game up. You know, it just there's a structure that exists there that is crumbling, and they don't want to admit it's crumbling. And I'm looking at it going, I don't want to be any part of that. I don't want to be in that building when it finally collapses. I want to do that, but not in that way. And that's when you can inspire that brainstorming about something different.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's definitely. I remember going into a dive so my parents back in California, and I dived in Hawaii, but I was in California for a bit, and I joined like this dive social, go and meet some people in a dive shop.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I just remember everyone being, 50 and plus. And here I am, I was like 30 years old at the time. And I was just like, wow, because it's very different because I'm in Asia. Whereas when you're diving in Asia, all the dive shops are younger. Like you get all the kind of backpackers and travelers, and especially like in Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, most of the dive instructors are in the 20s and 30s. So it's just a completely different market and dynamic that I saw in Asia and America. So definitely, and the marketing is very different as well because in Asia you're marketing to tourists, whereas in America
Mostly,
you're
yeah.
marketing to the local the people in the
You try
neighborhood.
to,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
but no,
yeah. When I became an instructor at my IDC, I was even at my IDC and on the instructor workforce at that high volume shop I worked at in Santa Clara. I was the second youngest instructor there, and I was 35 at the time, 36. 30. Yeah, I was just turned 35. And I was the second youngest, and the youngest went through the IDC with me there, and I'm not really sure what he's doing. He wasn't. He was one of those where like he kind of slid by doing the bare minimum through the IDC and still got signed off somehow, and that kind of changed my perspective too. Like that's the kind of quality instructorship you can put out and still get signed off to be an instructor. This industry needs some work because someone's going to die eventually. I
yeah,
just, I take the inherent risks of scuba diving seriously, and I keep that in the back of my mind with every student that I interact with because, I am not having anybody get hurt on my watch, and I want to make sure that I know everything I possibly can to keep them safe and be able to react quickly and accordingly and efficiently to be able to keep them safe. And that's not the case of some other instructors, unfortunately. But yeah, at that dive shop, man, there are a lot of great instructors that I learned a lot from there, and still hold dear to my heart. And then there are some that, um, were just like, listen here, little whippersnapper, and I'm like, I'm a
yeah,
36-year-old grown ass man. You don't talk to me like that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I mean, I don't have an ego, and like, the humility is what helped kind of guide me into what I do now. And it still continues to guide me to learn new things and adapt and, and adjust and be flexible. But at the same time, man, I'm not going to have anybody, I don't care how long you've been diving longer than me. Like, you're not going to talk to me
yeah,
like that. And, that created kind of a divide there. That's why I decided to split off, and it provided the opportunity for me to go, if I'm not welcome here, I don't need to be here. And I'm going to find
yeah.
some place where I'm better suited, like we talked about with military veterans, continuing that sense of purpose. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't feel like I continue that sense of purpose here. I need to go do something else. And USX was a big part of that. And getting my degree in oceanography is a big part of that. And now I'm Scuba Council Chair of Diversity in Aquatics. The work that they do is increasing safety and education and accessibility to aquatics for marginalized populations, predominantly for Black people, but for all people who have been marginalized in different ways. But historically, Black people specifically have a wrought history with accessibility to swimming pools and swim lessons through segregation, for a number of generations, even after slavery. And so, we have that history in America that we're dealing with, and organizations are doing great work to help kind of close that gap that exists there. And so, in my role, I'm all about getting more folks of color, more folks, impoverished folks, marginalized folks to have more access to the ocean through scuba diving, through whatever means that they're comfortable with, to be able to have that, not just for safety, but for, environmental protection as well.
Yeah, you know a lot of these organizations involved
Mm-hmm.
in diving, not like not dive shop organizations, but these other organizations that do outreach and nonprofit. So I'm gonna have to get a list of some of these organizations that you're part of so that we can kind of spread the word. Because I think it's really important for everyone in the dive industry that you're not just stuck being a dive instructor. You can do so much with that, right? As the experience you have as a dive instructor, and take it into research, take it to science, take it into so many of these organizations that you know about, and there's so much opportunity other than just being a dive instructor.
Yeah, my focus has been like really community driven nonprofits, you know. And obviously you're not going to get rich, you know, but I never wanted to do this to get rich anyway, right? Like that's the whole nature of nonprofits, is to not have a profit, but you can be sustainable. You can pay your bills like I do. Um, you know, and even then, that's not the only thing. That's what I'm driven by, you know. And so, you know, I urge others who are scuba dive masters or instructors and really want to do something with that outside of that conventional structure, to look at other opportunities. You know, get an associate's degree if you can, you know, so you can work as a biologist at an aquarium, you know. um, you know, I think most of them require at least an associate's, if not a bachelor's, you know. But even then, you know, maybe academic work isn't, you know, right for you either. There's commercial diving. There's all kinds of opportunities for you to kind of take diving as the core of what you do, and make it adjacent to something larger, that you can have a better impact in, that is sustainable, that you can, you know, pay your bills with, and, you know, check all those boxes and still feel fulfilled, you
Yeah.
know, because there's a lot more than just trying to be a scuba instructor, you know, being on that grind, because it's just doesn't work right now.
Yeah, boom. No, you took, yeah, the way you phrase it, the way you put it, it's great, man. You said that, I love where you said you see yourself as the Neil deGrasse Tyson of kind of the ocean. You want to inspire people to, jump in and get involved in the ocean.
Yeah,
What
and
do
I
you
want to
see
make it clear,
yourself?
I'm like, that's a lofty goal, and by no means do I feel like my charisma is on par with Neil deGrasse Tyson by any means, but I want the opportunity to have that kind of voice, you know, and that's what I'm after. I want to build my platform in a way where I can impact as many people as possible, as he does with space,
Yeah,
and with ourselves, as people who exist in that space on this planet. And the connections that he makes through it all. I mean, it's just really amazing, what he does, and I'm really inspired by him. He's very much a role model of mine, and I respect him fully. And I would never try to fill his shoes, but also I'm in pursuit of the type of platform that he has built for himself. And if I have the
yeah,
right charisma for it, and the right knowledge developed over time to be able to step in with those kind of credentials to be the equivalent of that, for the oceans, then by all means. And if not, somebody needs to, you know,
yeah,
somebody needs to. And it can't be somebody with no credentials running around here touching and molesting sharks for photo ops. I'm not going to mention any names. It can't be
yeah,
someone like that dismisses and discredits actual scientists that tell them to stop touching the sharks, and they keep doing it, for social media clout. It can't be anybody like that. It needs to be somebody who knows what they're doing. It needs to be somebody rooted in science, who's put the time in, and it needs to be more than just bells and whistles. It needs to be somebody with substantial experience, you know, like Neil deGrasse Tyson or like Dr. Anthony Fauci, who are experts in their field, to be able to come out, and we need to listen to them more. So if not myself, somebody needs to step into that position and take the forefront. Sylvia Earle's done an amazing job. I really respect her a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. She's amazing.
You
Yeah,
know, and also there needs to be more than just one anyway,
yeah,
you know, and she can only do so much work by herself. So, you know, I respect her a lot. She comes to mind, and also we need a lot more, you know,
mhm,
to, you know, someone who kind of serves at the intersection of this, of science and science communication and digital media, to be able to reach audiences in ways that they can understand and be inspired by. Because we have a lot of
yeah.
amazing scientists that are really smart, that don't know how to talk to the general public,
Media. Yeah, I
um,
agree.
and be media savvy. So we need a lot of people that can be at that intersection and do that kind of work. And I hope to be one of them. And if not, somebody else needs to.
Oh, I mean, I think your story is super inspirational, man. I love listening to it. I think it's a great message. It's something that we connected and I heard it, it really excited me. So you're just getting settled in Florida now.
Yeah.
I hope I'm assuming you're going to keep, once obviously COVID and whatnot kind of clears out. Hopefully, sooner than later, you're going to continue with that organization. What do you see yourself doing in the next couple years from here on out?
Man, it's gonna be a lot of good work with diversity in aquatics. I can see some really big things working with them. I'm excited about working with that organization. It's all volunteer. It's a 100% volunteer-based organization. Um, I helped build out their new website that's gonna be launching in the next week or so, maybe sooner. I don't know. We'll see. Um, so again, it's just leveraging my digital media skills to be able to help the underlying infrastructure of a lot of work that's being done, and also doing some frontline work as well. I'm at the Florida Institute of Technology. I'm getting my degree in oceanography, and I just picked up a position on campus in the underwater technology laboratory. I want to make sure I get that right. As a lab technician, I'm working on underwater vehicles, AUVs, ROVs, working on everything from vehicles that implant explosives on underwater mines to blow them up, to
Wow.
another ROV that scans underwater caves with LiDAR and helps map them out with LiDAR. So we've got all kinds of cool projects, and I want to share a little more of that as I'm able to, through that work. Once we get out of this funding gap, most importantly with USX, we're going to be launching more expeditions. I'm going to be a little more hands off with that and really kind of give leadership positions to others. It's all really about empowering other veterans. So I'm going to be in the leadership role that I am, and just kind of help guide the vision of the organization and just really let others execute. And so that's going to be an interesting dynamic moving forward, because I've am and continue to be like very hands-on, and I want to be expedition leader for every single ocean expedition, and I don't think that's viable moving forward once we get the kind of funding we're looking at. So, it's going to be empowering other veterans to be able to step into those leadership roles as expedition leader, as director of operations, to be able to carry that torch for the organization. And it's really just going to be kind of buckling down and just learning. Getting a degree is hard enough, and I've got a lot on my plate, but I feel like I can balance it. And I'm going to be launching a vlog here pretty soon once
There you
COVID
go.
lifts and I can start
Yeah.
diving more. I would really love to share my knowledge of starting with my background as I've done here, but in a little more of a structured, like narrative way, and just kind of like share my experiences, and kind of do like these virtual tours of these amazing dive sites around Florida, help increase the tourism and the travel to Florida and the beautiful dive sites that we have here. I know Florida's got a crazy kind of moniker in the news, Florida man, Florida woman, stuff going on, but like none of that stuff matters when you're in the water. So come
Yeah.
here, get in the water as quickly as possible, stay in the water as long as you can, and you'll avoid the craziness of Florida, and enjoy its beauty underwater. And
Hey, is my camera stuck?
oh yeah, it's been stuck for about 30
Yeah.
seconds or so. I thought it would shake loose, but yeah, you are stuck.
Shoot, I don't
But I
know
think we're
why it's
wrapping
being
up
stuck.
anyway,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, definitely. So people can find you if people wanted to find you, where can they find you?
Oh man, I have my own website, anestivega.com. You'll see all my
There you
social
go.
media links there. I have a newsletter you can sign up for. I need to post more to that newsletter. I'm starting to run low on content because of the nature of COVID-19 and the limitations on scuba and travel. But I post a lot on my social media, especially Instagram. That's my main platform. I've got like 16,000 followers there and growing. So
Awesome.
all my social media handles are my name, at Anesti Vega. And
That's a great name.
yeah,
That's a great name.
it's the one I have, so it works
Yeah.
out. Yeah, so check me out
Awesome.
on social media. Yeah, I'm posting more about oceanography and ocean engineering, ROVs, newest advances in technology around exploring the ocean too. I'm all about submersibles, so I'm trying to get more involved in that as well. So you guys will be along for the journey as I learn all this stuff and share
Yeah, most
everything.
definitely. Hey, NST, thanks so much, guys. Please follow along NST Vega's journey. It's awesome. I'm so happy that I was able to connect with you, man. I hope in the future we can connect again. But thanks again for your time, NST. You're super inspirational. I
Thanks,
mean,
man.
I think your story is amazing. I hope you keep sharing it. And there is no, for me, your idea of going after the space like with the platform of Neil deGrasse Tyson is amazing because he's dreaming big, and I think you've got a great foundation and like base to start and launch it. So
Thank you
here
so
to
much.
support
Appreciate it,
you.
man. Appreciate the
All
support,
right.
and yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you, Anesti. All right, take care. Bye.
Take care.